Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows ChimeyGuitar. So it's another little track that I did. You can do that as well. These are my experiments with things like soft clock and Console X. But this time, rather than the guitars being high-gain distortion guitars, these are compressed. Because ChimeyGuitar is all about using a stage of compression, and it's BeziComp, the recent compressor I've been developing, in there rather than a distortion stage. So let's see how this works. Firstly, it sounds very chimey and nice and everything. But let's isolate something that's compressed. For instance, these guitars are quite heavily compressed. In fact, so much so that they're choking and coughing a little bit. They're doing a little unusual thing with the tone. Without the compression, it's a Strat sound. And of course, with the compression, it is also still a Strat sound. But it's a fancier, I don't know, Dire Straits or whatever Strat sound, where we fire it up. And we get more out of it. So this works much like PointyGuitar, which was the high-gain distortion including a amp simulation, and these have exactly the same thing. Compress is operating on multiple stages of filtering. It's also using the same filtering that exists in PointyGuitar, so if you're familiar with that, it's going to be the same here. You got your presence, which is a very high frequency sound. You can see here, for this clean sound, I'm allowing a lot of presence to get through, partly because this is not really designed for saturating, so you should be able to pass it through fairly cleanly. Then you've got your high, which is the chug in PointyGuitar, mid, which I do not have turned up very high, and then low and sub. And all of these things, the more you push, the farther it's going to go in the direction this pushes. It's going to be a stage of this, the stage of compression, a stage of this, a stage of compression. So it has a way of being able to isolate frequencies and bring them out in a way that's kind of useful. And interestingly, this is not really like a amp simulation per se. That's not really how this works. It's kind of a concept for how to make guitar sound a certain way. And along those lines, I can switch over to a guitar, namely this one, and we can play with it a little bit. For instance, if I make this be more compressed, it becomes a really exaggerated sound. And it's okay to have this, but it's going to bring out compression artifacts as well. For instance, if we take our speed control and ramp that up, it gets weird, or indeed, rather distorted in its own peculiar way. Or quite distorted, really. And if you have it at very low speed, the attack's going to poke out, as you can hear. And then we can also drop compression way down so that it's similar to dry, which is this, with just a little tone coloring. So as you keep adding compression, you're going to get more and more of that effect. And then we have the same thing going on with the filtering. For instance, if we were leaning on mid much more heavily, or pulling it out more aggressively, this is how we get our tones using this particular one. It's not a modeling of any particular amp or anything like that. It's just a series of sort of digital math arranged in a certain way and using features like the Bezier compression. And lastly, we have high speaker and low speaker. So we can make it like it's a larger speaker with less high frequency extension like this, or bring it back till it's bright again. And of course the L speaker can do similar things, which is one might do when you use it with a bass, because this bass is also heavily compressed. It's using ChimeyGuitar too. It's just voiced in such a way that it's more like a bass amp than a guitar amp. But there's no specific amp involved ever. Instead, you're picking particular frequencies that you might like. For instance, the L speaker on this one, if we bring it up a little higher, we're going to start to get a pronounced resonance as the low frequency cutoff kicks in. So you get deeper lows when the low resonance of the cab reinforces things, particularly if it's at a note that we're hitting. And again, we can compress it very hard, but the original sound, that's a Rickenbacker, which I have fairly recently rewired a little bit so that I can run the mono output afterwards, because it'll work better for the flat ones. And it's a fairly normal sound, but then we get to boost it like this. With the pronounced thump on the attack and the very flattened end result. And that's happening largely through low and sub here. In this case, mid is profoundly cut, and then I'm letting a little bit of high and presence in there, although you don't really notice that much of it. If instead of low it was just sub, you'd have this deep, deep tone, which would be emphasized by L speaker being tuned to the resonance. But that's not as obvious a sound, really. So what we do is we put low back, or lots of low if we want, and we have ranges of tonalities coming through here, or indeed we can have the pluck that's coming off of that Rickenbacker, that's going to be showing up in mid. Setting it with low rather than only sub means the tone's going to show up a little bit more in smaller speakers rather than just only on huge giant speakers. And then lastly, we can go back to these ones, which are maybe, like here's one, without the compression, without ChimeyGuitar, we have this, but we kick in ChimeyGuitar, and it's very heavily compressed, but there's a sort of drony, overly dense quality here, where it's maybe the compression artifacts are showing up a little bit too much. We can do things with that a couple of different ways. One of them would be altering speed so the texture of that overcompressedness is different. So we can make it a little bit denser, sort of chewier in a way. The warbling in there is more aggressive. Or for full chiminess, we can have the speed going way up, or we can slow it down so that the warbling is no longer at that sort of lower mid-range frequency that we're hearing here. And then lastly, it's a little bit overcompressed to get the texture of that sound. So we can pull that back just a hair. And then we can do the same thing with its twin. Down to a little bit slower. And then balance that way. Now it sounds like the Strat that it is, but it's not doing that funny warbly thing, which was slight overcompression. We can add the bass, and then we can add the guitar. And this is all the ChimeyGuitar things in this mix. Just for fun, I'll show you the other things in the mix are actually there's Roland Alpha Juno doing that, and all the rest of this stuff is in fact modular synthesizer stuff being played with a piezo pickup attached to a wooden plate. So none of this is sequenced. I played it all in one instrument at a time. Like if you listen closely enough, you can hear I've got this little hat going on, or this kick going on. But that's not actually a machine kick. I am playing it along. Oh, it finished. I'm playing it along with the regular track because, of course, what underlies the regular track is our old favorite soft clock. So the way to get a groove like that is you set up soft clock, you lay down a track which you're going to overdub stuff over, and the overdubbing should be as low latency as you can get it and have the instruments or things, you know, mic'd or direct, or at least as responsive as you can get them. It doesn't have to be a wooden plate played as a hand drum driving synthetic things like I'm doing. You could have a simple MIDI keyboard and be playing it into soft synths, and that would work just as well as long as it was responding quickly to your playing, because being able to play modular stuff using a wooden plate and a trigger generator is very quick and responsive. So you're going to try to get something that responds well to be able to get this style of groove, because the idea behind this style of groove is it is a soft clock oriented groove, meaning that it is not meant to have any machine elements at all. There is no underlying click track. There is only soft clock. Everything that sounds like a click track is being played by hand. And it's just a question of, can you play real drums that regularly? Can you tap on a thing that regularly? Can you play a MIDI keyboard and play MIDI keyboard drums in that regularly? And whatever works, whatever works, get it to work. And that is what else is lurking inside my little groove that I did in a matter of about 3 hours for ChimeyGuitar. I hope you like ChimeyGuitar. It's the most recent plugin. Pretty much everything up to and including the reverb that I have on this little Roland keyboard that I've got, that is going into both K-Guitar Hall and K-Cosmos. So you can have all of the things inside this. And on that note, I hope you've enjoyed my little demo of ChimeyGuitar. I think it's a good follow-up to PointyGuitar, because honestly, some of the sounds that I got off of it are closer to what I like or would like to hear coming off of my fingers when I play a guitar. And I had a fun time like doing the solo and stuff. I'm working on trying to get that the card game I was developing. I would like to make this into a computer game because I have no great faith that I'll be able to do a physical card game and get it manufactured and not like blow a bunch of money doing it and not be able to sell enough of them. But I can make a free computer program that people can download, and that should get it into people's hands anyhow. And the more I work on that, the more I will be going into the studio, namely back here, and doing the same techniques that I'm demoing in my You Can Do This little clip of music that I put together in a matter of 3 hours, including the mix. And when I say you can do this, I mean it. Like, there's a goodly amount of guitars and basses. Not everybody has a Rick. I'm very happy with my Rick bass. So long as I continue to have it, I intend to continue to use it. But you don't necessarily have to have those things to be able to make music. And everything other than the instruments and the drums, and that's basically just the flavor of tone. It doesn't have to be that drum sound. It doesn't have to be that kick sound. It doesn't have to be that hat sound. You could simply work off of samples, and so I like firing samples using simply Surge XT. If you load a sample of the correct format into Surge XT as a wavetable, that can fire one-shots, and you can make a responsive instrument out of that, and that's open source and free, as is all of my plugins. So think of it this way. You can do this, and I'm doing it with a, not even really a proper Strat. The guitar body is like from a kit guitar, and if I remember correctly, I got the neck from somewhere. It was eaten up with a woodworm, and the other one is also not necessarily a real Strat body. And I think maybe I'm trying to think of whether the neck on that one came off of like a $150 Telecaster that I got that was enormously beat up. You don't have to get fancy expensive instruments. Just get stuff, run it to the computer somehow, and ChimeyGuitar is now getting me closer to the kind of guitar and bass compressed sounds I've always enjoyed. And it's just a matter of learning how to use it, because the range of adjustment there is very great. So yeah, you can do this, and I'm going to play the tune for you as the fade. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.